I get it now. Thanks. Now, Annaleci.
All right. Well, this is a good transition into me. So my name is Annaleci Lamantia, and I live in upstate New York, and I am 17. And I am here to share a little bit of my story, but mostly what the past 5 years have been like for me. But I would also like to thank everybody for inviting me here because I'm very excited to be here, and this is an awesome opportunity. So I am young, and many may say that I still have my whole entire life ahead of me. But that's not how my mind works. Depression is defined as feelings of severe despondency and dejection. And a chronic illness is defined as having an illness persisting for a long time or constantly reoccurring. These two terms are closely linked and related, and I am unfortunately one out of the 1/3 of people with a chronic illness that suffers from depression. Having to endure physical pain takes a toll on your mental state. You begin to think of thoughts that the average teenager would never think of. And if you decide to tell anyone about these thoughts, they sound disappointed because you have fought so hard to be here and you should be grateful. But that's not exactly how it works. If the survivor's guilt doesn't get to you first, then it's the feeling that you don't or never will truly belong or be normal to the average person. Every case is different when it comes to depression and heart conditions. There's no textbook out there telling you exactly what's wrong with a person and how to fix it, and that's the hardest part. My story begins on February 26, 1999. My mother had a fairly normal pregnancy. Nothing abnormal on the ultrasounds, nothing that could be shown that I had any issue. I was born at Strong Memorial Hospital in the city of Rochester. Shortly before 12 o'clock, the nurse told my mother it was time to breastfeed. Immediately after, I coded in her arms for the first time. She began to unwrap me as fast as she could as my dad yelled for the crash cart. They rushed me off to the NICU, and 8 hours later they came back and diagnosed me with a rare congenital heart defect called truncus arteriosus type 2. They gave my parents two choices. They could either bring me to Boston for an experimental surgery or bring me home to pass. My parents ended up bringing me to Boston, where I only had a 10% survival rate at the time of the surgery. The next day, I coded again while trying to eat, and on the third day, I finally went in for my first repair. It was 18 hours long, and the repair consisted of creating a wall between the ventricles to create the bottom two chambers, and then allowing the aorta to stay connected to the left ventricle. A homograph, which is a human donor tissue that contains a valve, is used to connect the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery. I was then brought up to the NICU with my chest still open, but soon after a clot was discovered. And when they tried to remove it, I arrested once again, and I was put on ECMO or life support. After 3 days, my surgeon decided that it was time to try to get me off of ECMO. I had about a 50-50% chance of breathing on my own. The last try was finally successful, and my heart was beating on its own. My chest was open for 2 weeks, and in result, a bad infection along with a bleed on my brain was created. After 6 long weeks, I finally was allowed to go home, but recovery was slow, but thankfully I had no further complications. The doctors warned my parents that I would soon need further medical intervention to expand my homograph so that I could grow larger and be stronger. They also warned my parents to look out for mental handicaps because of all the times I had arrested. So 2 years went by, and I began to grow up like a normal child. I walked and talked with no signs of any further disabilities. But like my surgeon, Dr. Jonas, said, I would need a further intervention at the age of 2. My second heart surgery was on January 4th, 2001. This one only took 8 hours, and the homograph was expanded. But similar to the first surgery, I had some complications. I had an infection that ate away most of my sternum that created a lot of damage and scar tissue. Along with that, another bleed on my brain that wasn't as large this time, and a 5-week stay at the hospital. I went home on very heavy-duty antibiotics and a PICC line that I would wear around in a little backpack. After the slow recovery, I finally was able to grow up. I started dancing at the age of 2.5, and I haven't left the stage since. activity that I can do on my own that I am in control of. My teachers let me sit down if I need to, or even alter their routines so I'm safe and I don't get hurt. When growing up, my parents taught me everything I needed to know about my body. How to tell if something was wrong, if anything ever seemed off, and they also explained to me that if I ever had any questions, to make sure to go to my doctor and get properly informed if they didn't have the answers. The only thing that I ever was different compared to me to the average kid was that I could not do contact sports, I was sick a lot more often, and I had a large scar that went from the top of my chest to my mid-stomach with smaller ones kind of all around. But I never had any bad experiences with bullies, but actually taught a lot of my friends about what I had so nobody would be scared to hang out with me out of fear that something bad would happen. I also had an amazing support system between my friends and family, and without them I wouldn't be the person I am today. But I always wondered what it would be like to meet someone else like me. I thought about how maybe they had been through similar things, and I wonder if they had anything to warn me to look out for the future. So 10 years went by, and I started to feel a little bit run down as I hit the age 11. I was having a hard time keeping up, and it was beginning to frustrate me. I had never felt different until I hit that age. I knew something was going to have to happen because I felt my body giving up on me. One night, my parents had my sister and I sit down at the dining room table, and they began to explain how they had been going behind my back and going to visit my doctors without me and talking about what the future holds. And the doctors explained that it was time to look into further intervention in a year. But my surgeon, Dr. Jonas, believed that I could wait another year, and if I had decided to wait another year, I would have to be in a wheelchair and most likely be in an oxygen tank. So my parents had given me the choice at that time. If I wanted to stay in Rochester and get it done at Strong by Dr. Alfieras, or go to Boston and get it done by Dr. Jonas. And so that night, after all this information was piled on me, I remember just crawling into my mother's lap and bawling. I was 11 years old, and I was in 6th grade, or about to go in 6th grade. And this is not what the average 11-year-old thinks about. It's not the average decision that the 11-year-old has to make. But I'm thankful that my parents gave me those choices. They let me have my own decisions to make. So after that, I decided that I wanted to get my 3rd heart surgery done in Rochester by Dr. Alfieras. But before that, I wanted to meet somebody like me. I wanted to see how that person lived. I wanted to see if that most recent surgery completely changed their whole entire life and they felt 10 times better. So my mom went to the social workers at Rochester, and that's where she found Mended Little Hearts of Greater Rochester. And I was paired with a mentor, and her name was Brittany Cognata. She had a rare defect similar to mine and had just had her 3rd open heart surgery recently before we had met. We went out to lunch a lot and the mall a few times and saw each other occasionally at Mended Hearts events. She had a lot of really good advice for me personally, and I gained a lot of knowledge from her, and she answered a lot of my questions going into that surgery. So on May 6th, 2011, at Strong Golisano Children's Hospital with Dr. Alfieras, I had my 3rd open heart surgery. I needed a full conduit replacement, meaning that my homograph would be replaced with a man-made conduit that contains a porcine valve, so I currently have a pig valve. Dr. Alfieras was able to put in adult conduit, and the surgery was 6 hours this time, 5 hours to get through all of the scar tissue, and only 45 minutes for the actual repair. Hopefully this will get me through adulthood and beyond. I remember certain things from this surgery, but mostly my reaction to seeing how much larger my scar was, how much bigger, and how much more predominant it was compared to what it used to be. I was in and out of the hospital in only 7 days, so compared to the first 2, there were no further complications with this surgery. I was in and out. I only had to stay out of school for about a month, and then I was back in for the last few weeks of my 6th grade year. After this surgery, I kind of altered the way I saw things. I was told that I was supposed to feel amazing and would have the energy of any other kid. For me, that was never the case. And when my physical health began to take a toll on my mental well-being, I was having chronic chest pain, weird rhythm issues, and what we call episodes, which are when I breathe rapidly, tend to pass out, throw up, things like that. And my parents were bringing me to at least 2 or 3 specialists a week with $60 co-pays for every single one, and we never got an exact answer as to why I was going through all of this chronic pain in my body. Until this day, we still have no answer. Out of frustration, I took a long break from any appointments, and it honestly made me not want to go to the doctor anymore. So throughout this struggle with my own physical health, I needed a support system. And so I decided to get more involved with Mended Little Hearts. I began to start visiting people inpatient, one-on-one, or during coffee hours with my mom in the hospital on Wednesdays. I will never forget the first time I went in there, and there was just a nice couple, and you could tell that it was their first baby. And I sat down, and my mom introduced me, and she always kind of talks about me like I'm not there. So I was kind of like, okay, I can get used to this, I guess. So I was sitting there, and then, I was like, okay, I'll introduce myself now. The mother starts asking me some personal questions that I really don't have an issue with her asking me. And then all of a sudden, she just starts crying. And I did not know what to do. I looked at my mom, and afterwards I asked her, I'm like, why is she crying? Why is she crying? I didn't say anything bad. And my mom looks at me, you just gave her hope. You just gave her what she needs to push through to help this baby. And I will never forget that. So, excuse me. So, that's when she asked me to go back and see her baby for the first time. And at first I was extremely hesitant because it's such a reality to look at a baby that was once what you were like, to see what those parents are like and think that that's what your parents went through. So I decided to face reality, and I went back there and I saw the baby. And as soon as I saw her with her chest open, I was just dumbfounded. I did not know what to say. All I had ever seen was pictures. After that, I definitely took a little break. I needed to breathe and think about things for a while. And then after a few weeks went by, I thought to myself, why not inspire these families? Why not help them at the time that they need it the most? So I decided to go back in with my mom a few weeks later. There were 2 babies in there that were just born with HLHS. One, his name was Sean Baker. He is still with us now, and he has had so many complications. He's 4 years old now. He has had 26 surgeries. He is just the light of my life, and I love him to death. So, Shawnee is definitely the strongest person I have ever met. And I am extremely thankful that I had the opportunity to meet him. And I still meet him all the time. I go in the hospital and I crawl in his crib and we take naps, and it gives him a chance, it gives his mom a chance to get out and have some time. So, and I would rather just stay with him every day if I could. And at the same time, there was a baby named Mackenzie Morgan Whipple. And she was also born with HLHS, and she was born in September, around the same time as Sean. And I visited her with my mom a lot, and I always remember my mom coming home from work and talking about how she had visited her and talked to Destiny, her mom, and all of these things. And I'll never forget, July 21st, actually 2 days ago was the anniversary, she had passed away. And I was sleeping over at a friend's house, and both of my parents walked in, and they told me to come inside and that they had some things to tell me. And that was the first time I had ever had to deal with, grieving and losing a baby. And it was definitely hardest things that I have ever done, but I am forever thankful that I met her. She is what pushes me to do what I do. She is the one that helps me speak for the ones that can't. She inspires many, and she's not even here. So I go and visit her gravesite constantly. She is the extra push I need. After she had passed, I was dealing with grieving for her and my own medical issues. I was missing a lot of school at the time. My grades were failing. I couldn't pick them up. I felt like I had failed my parents, and I didn't know what to do. I was lost. I was alone. I was isolating. I did not know what to do. And at that time, I believed that life just was not worth living. I felt like I was existing, not living. At that time, I was constantly taking pain relievers to get rid of pain, but in return, it was tearing my stomach apart, making it hard for me to eat and keep food down. Doctors were telling me that I was fine and normal, but if I was fine and normal, why was I always in pain? I wanted to end my suffering and felt as if nothing or anyone could help me. Everyone was always getting on my nerves, and I was no longer hanging out with any of my friends. I have hit my lowest point, where my mother has had to scoop me off the floor and save my life pretty much again. I was always optimistic until I hit that point. Soon after that, after my little bit of a mental breakdown, my mother had put me into a program in the hospital where I stayed for about a month and a half. And that program definitely changed everything for me. I figured out that my own health is not always in my own control, and that things happen for a reason. To always look at a situation optimistically, because you never know. I've already made it this far when all the odds were against me. What's a little bit more? There's an increase. Shoot, wrong sentence, I apologize. These past few years, I've struggled in many ways, and I blame the gap in care between the pediatric and adult care as one of them. There isn't a system set for kids my age that are going through this transition into adulthood. I'm about to turn 18, and all of my medical things are in my own hands. Of course, my mother will still be with me, but what's going to happen when my mother is no longer with me? There's an increase in technology, but a lack in data collection. Many kids are surviving now, and nobody knows what the future holds for them. And as the CHD community grows, because more and more people are living, there's no place for young adults to get proper care anymore. And due to the fact there's no proper system, many fall out of care and end up getting sicker or passing away sooner than they could. There have been a lot of research done also on the link between congenital heart defects and depression. Your mental and physical health are closely linked together, and they usually affect each other. There are certain things to look out for as parents when it comes to your child. Make sure they know to ask questions or feel comfortable telling you if something feels off. Never let their disability define them or hold them back from what they want. Watch out for negative outlooks on situations, because that just always makes things harder for everyone. Be encouraging to try new things, because all the time doctors and parents tell us what we can't do instead of what we can do. Educate your child on what he or she has, because their heart condition will never be fixed or ever go away. This is what we live with. This is what we're always going to live with. Make sure that you explain everything, even if you have to put it in simple terms. It's the littlest things, because they're going to get asked in public. They're going to get asked at school. And they shouldn't be ashamed of it. In no way, shape, or form should they ever be ashamed of it. My parents went to every therapy session or doctor's appointment. They were there to hold my hand through everything. It's all about support. Even if you don't have a heart condition and you will never truly understand, you still have ears to listen. You still have positive feedback. Everyone is different, and there isn't a textbook in this world to go by. Everyone deals with things in different different ways, mentally and physically. It's about coming together as a community and supporting this new wave of CHD survivors. Most of us are not supposed to be alive or have literally died. We have all been through so much, and the mark on your chest is a symbol of your strength. It's acceptable to have a few bumps in the road. That's just life. Don't let the little things get you down, and remember that you survived for a reason and you deserve a life worth living. And with that, please encourage your children to be proud of what they fought for. We've been through so much, and look at us now, and technology's just getting better. So thank you guys.